Without diving too deeply into my past or sharing overly personal details, I'll just say outright that I've been a bit of a loner since I was a kid. Friends were few, and I spent most of my time immersed in video games on my computer or the consoles I grew up with. As I hit my high school years, I found myself drawn to long, wandering walks. I'd roam through forests, stroll past gravestones and cemeteries, and eventually I got hooked on the thrill of trespassing, venturing into places I wasn't meant to be. It began with sneaking into cemeteries after dark, but soon I grew bolder, poking around abandoned hospitals and schools. Getting my driver's license made these adventures much easier to reach. I rarely brought along one of my few friends, maybe once or twice, but honestly, I preferred going solo. There's something about me that's a little odd. I never used to feel fear while exploring deserted places alone at night. Or maybe I should say I didn't feel scared back then. My method for finding abandoned buildings was simpler than you'd expect. I'd open Google Earth, zoom into rural areas, and scan for structures that look forgotten in out-of-the-way spots. I'd compile a list of 5 to 10 locations and aim to visit them all in a single day. Sometimes a place wouldn't be abandoned at all, but I got pretty good at spotting the real ones over time. This hobby meant a lot of trekking through woods. And yes, to answer the obvious question, I did have a job, a minimum wage gig stocking shelves at a supermarket. When I wasn't working or in school, I was usually out exploring. One day, one of the spots on my list was a small, abandoned church. I parked on a dirt road and hiked about 10 minutes through the woods, wearing jeans and sturdy boots to move quickly without scratching myself up. As I walked, I noticed rusted old trash cans and other debris scattered around, a sign I was getting close. Then, through the trees, I spotted a clearing with a structure in it. There it was, a run-down little church sitting alone in the middle of nowhere. In front of it was an old well, surprisingly unsealed. I peered down, but it was so deep it disappeared into pitch blackness. When I paused to listen, I caught a faint sound, a rhythmic clicking, about 1 click every 2 seconds. It wasn't like water dripping. It sounded more like a stick tapping against a stone wall. Intrigued, I lingered longer than I probably should have, almost mesmerized by the noise. Eventually, I snapped out of it and decided to head inside the church. The wooden porch creaked under my boots, the decayed boards giving slightly. The double doors were ajar, which wasn't surprising. Most abandoned places I visited, unless they were well-known spots shared on forums, weren't boarded up. I pushed one door open, and it let out a loud groan that echoed through surrounding trees. Inside, the air was heavy with dust and the smell of aged wood. Sunlight streamed through broken stained glass windows, casting jagged patterns. Some pews were flipped over or missing entirely, and the pulpit leaned crookedly at the front. Behind it, an arched doorway led into deeper shadows. I did my usual routine, swept my flashlight around, snapped a few photos from my collection with my digital camera. There was a haunting beauty to the decay, a sacred place like a church, crumbling into ruin. It was striking yet heartbreaking. I moved slowly toward the arched doorway at the back and stepped into a narrow hallway lined with what seemed like old storage rooms. One door was gone, others were splintered or barely hanging on their hinges. Cobwebs draped across the ceiling. At the end of the hall, I spotted a staircase descending into the basement. Jackpot, I thought. Exploring abandoned basements always gave me a rush, and back then, nothing within reason scared me. But this time, something about that open basement door and the darkness below made me hesitate. I felt a slight shiver, honest to God. Still, I pressed on. I started down the stairs, each step creaking loudly, as if the wood might give way. On the 7th step, my right foot broke through with a sharp crack. Before I could catch myself, I fell hard, landing on a pile of debris and dirt below. The impact jolted my tailbone, and I let out a curse, probably something like, "Damn it." My flashlight had flown out of my hand, so I crawled over to retrieve it. That's when I heard a voice. It was high-pitched, maybe a woman's or a young boy's, speaking words I couldn't make out, except for one clear hello. The rest was gibberish, like someone tried to form sentences, but not quite knowing how. I stood, shining my flashlight around. The basement was just what you'd expect. broken furniture, mostly cinder blocks, a dirt floor, stone walls. Then I noticed a tunnel in one of the walls, roughly dug out by hand. The voice was coming from there. I know it was reckless, but my curiosity took over. I stepped a couple of paces into the tunnel, scanning with my flashlight. The walls were uneven, clearly carved out with shovel. Then my flashlight flickered, nearly stopping my heart. I smacked it a few times, and it steadied, but the noise was louder than I'd meant it to be. The voice grew louder, still unintelligible, but with that same strange tone, and I was sure it was coming from deeper in the tunnel. Then it stopped. Silence hung for a few seconds. Then a click. 2 seconds later, another. The same rhythm and sound as the well, echoing through the tunnel. The clicks and the gibberish voice grew louder, closer. My heart was pounding in my throat. I turned and bolted back toward the stairs, remembering the broken step. Instead of trying to leap over it, I grabbed the sides of the staircase and hauled myself up. That MY flashlight slipped from my grip, but it hardly mattered. I was already climbing the stairs, leaving the dim basement behind for the bright upstairs. Reaching the top, I didn't glance back. I hurried to the corridor, dashed across the main room, and burst out the front doors. I sprinted past the well, pausing briefly. The eerie clicking noise had vanished. No sound at all lingered, not even birdsong. It was an unsettling, absolute quiet. I peered into the well's depths one last time, seeing only inky darkness. Then I turned and bolted through the forest, reaching my car far quicker than I'd gotten to the church, though I was gasping for air. I cut my adventure short, skipping the other spots I'd planned to visit. This was one of those moments that leaves you rattled, driving home in silence, radio off. I didn't abandon my exploration hobby entirely, but I needed a break. I was thoroughly shaken. I hope it was just some kids messing around in there, trying to spook people. But deep down, that explanation feels unlikely. Music, this experience happened a while back, and it's still etched in my mind. My buddies and I love outdoor adventures. I'll call them John and Anthony. One day, bored, we decided to fish in a wooded area near some farmland. A farmer and his dog chased us off. We tried hiding, but the dog sniffed us out, and the farmer, oddly already chatting with a friend on the phone, threatened to call the cops. We found it kind of amusing. For some reason, we thought it'd be smart to sneak back the next day to explore the property. It was about an hour before dusk, and the place was vast, sprawling across acres. We hiked through thick woods, similar to where we'd fished before. Despite checking Google Maps, it was easy to lose our way. I recall thinking we should leave before nightfall. At first, everything felt normal, no bad vibes. We admired the horses, even petting a few. I found it odd that this huge farmland had only horses. My uncle's smaller farm has a mix of animals, not just one kind. I shrugged it off, figuring the owner might just focus on horses. After trekking through the woods, we reached a fence at the property's edge. John led, I was in the middle, and Anthony trailed behind. That's when we stumbled on a dilapidated house, surrounded by high-end cars and a beat-up RV. We were stunned and crept around the vehicles. There was also a creepy, run-down shed. It was wild to see. I even recorded a video. A__Corvette Raptor, Bentley. Wow. There were Porsches, Range Rovers, Ford Raptors, Bentleys, Corvettes, and Ferraris. The deeper we went, the more cars we saw, some stripped for parts. We suspected this might be a car theft operation. After checking out the cars, John suggested exploring inside the camper. Anthony kept watch while I held the door for John, who's the smallest and seemed best for squeezing in. Inside, we found signs someone was living there, fishing rods, fresh food, bedding. Though the camper was worn out, it was clearly someone's home, so we left quickly. I forgot to mention, there were car tires inside too. We weren't there to damage anything, just to look. We moved to the back of the property, where we saw side-by-sides, likely used to patrol the land. There was another dilapidated shed, and inside, a foul stench hit us. We laughed it off, joking it might be a body, though none of us took it seriously. Then we heard the property's gate creak open and slam shut, about 1,000 feet away. We started heading back to the woods to avoid being spotted. That's when a van turned onto our street, headlights glowing as dusk settled. We sprinted through the trees, unsure if the driver saw us. We probably should have left then, but we pressed on to explore the property's other side. After hiking along perimeter through more woods, we saw more horses and finally reached the main house, which looked neglected. About 25 feet away stood another camper, or what seemed like one, massive and vine-covered, likely unmoved for decades. Next to it was a jet ski, also smothered in vines. We pried the door open quietly, cautious since we were near the house. Though it seemed deserted, we stayed careful, not just because we were trespassing, but because the suspicious setup suggested ties to the car theft ring. Getting caught would mean trouble. Sneaking around the house, we spotted the property's most luxurious car, a weathered but stunning Ferrari. I didn't snap a photo or video since we were close to the house, and the horses were getting noisy. Things got eerie at the property's far end. We found a boat and a cooler tucked in thick vegetation about 15 feet away. John poked around the boat, and we joked again about a body in the cooler, but when we got closer, a putrid smell like decay hit us. We backed off, not wanting to open it and risk seeing something awful. The vibe turned sour, and as we headed back, Anthony heard noises. We stopped to listen, and we all heard them. Strange sounds, maybe just the woods or our paranoia amplifying everything. The brush was tall, about head high, and we took turns standing on a rock for a better view. When John climbed up, still joking, his face went pale, like he'd seen a ghost. He wouldn't talk, so I stepped onto the rock to look. What I saw is burned into my memory. Through the vegetation, about 50 feet away, a man sat at a table with a black cat. That wasn't the creepy part. His face had no features, no eyes, no mouth, no nose, just blank. Call me crazy, but I know what I saw. It felt like he was staring at us, though he had no eyes. A woman with him locked eyes with me, then bolted, aiming to cut us off. I'm still unsure if the man's face was truly featureless or wrapped in white medical tape or bandages. His head was oddly small, and the image haunts me. It was dark, and we faced a long trek back through the woods. It felt like someone was trailing us, with eerie sounds. Stomping, galloping, screams. We tried to move quietly, but quickly. We made it back, ensuring we weren't followed. I still don't know what we saw or if it was human, but that experience lingers, and none of us will ever return. Music. I visited a quarry in McKinney, Texas, and after what happened, I'll never go back. Some context. My first trip, there was already unsettling. My friends Josh, Miles, and I went cliff jumping after seeing YouTube videos of others doing it. The quarry was only a half hour from home. Miles, 17, and I, 16, could drive, so we figured it'd be fun. The quarry had a creepy vibe. A narrow dirt road looped around it, flanked by run-down white buildings like metal boxes on one side and a fence along a rocky path on the other. We drove Miles' Jeep, passing signs warning no trespassing in blasting zone. One cardboard sign even read, "Trespassers will be shot on sight." In Texas, shooting trespassers is legal, though rare. We parked in a gravel lot by an abandoned-looking building, got out reluctantly, and walked toward the quarry. A truck passed us, its driver staring blankly, which spooked us. But since he didn't stop, we figured they might not mind us being there. We reached the fence, hopped it, and found the smallest cliff-jumping spot. Within 10 minutes, we spotted a large snake in the water, so we moved to a 35-foot cliff farther down. After checking the depth, we jumped for an hour before getting bored and heading to a bigger spot. At the quarry's end, as we walked the path, a black Hummer stopped. A woman, maybe mid-30s, rolled down her window and shouted, "What the hell are you doing on my property?" Stunned, I replied innocently, "We thought this was public land." She saw through the lie, yelling more, then said something chilling. "John, get the gun," while holding her phone. We froze, terrified. She told us to follow her, driving slowly 20 feet to a gate. We apologized profusely, promising never to return. She said the cops were coming and pointed us to a dirt path off her property. We thanked her and ran faster than we thought possible, jumped in the Jeep, and sped off. I wish that was the end. But it's not at a few months after our first adventure. Miles asked if I'd ever returned to Corey, and I cautiously said I considered it with a larger group. We rounded up 5 friends and drove to the quarry in my car. I was behind the wheel, and after roughly an hour, we reached a church parking lot, just a couple of minutes from the quarry. We chose to park there to avoid any chance of the ladies spotting our car and noting our license plate. We strolled down the dirt path toward the quarry, passing a few vehicles along the way. One driver, a guy in his early 20s, pulled up beside us and warned us to be cautious of a black Hummer. We chuckled and shared the tale of our previous quarry visit with him. Then, we continued along the dirt trail. We hopped over the quarry's perimeter fence and opted for the second spot, which offered a bit of cover from the dirt road. We'd been enjoying ourselves for about an hour when a silver van rolled up about 25 yards away at the road's end. It wasn't a black Hummer, so we didn't bolt immediately, but we started gathering our things in case we needed to make a quick exit. Trees mostly blocked our view of the van. After waiting a minute, assuming the driver was just occupied inside, we were startled by 2 loud gunshots nearby. The shots sent a jolt of fear through us. The quarry's exit was a good 300 yards away, with the main dirt road about 125 yards from our spot. I took the lead, with my friend Aiden close behind. More gunshots rang out about 40 yards off, sounding like 8 shots in total so far. Glancing back, I couldn't spot the shooter. We reached the fence, clambered over it, and hit the main dirt road leading to the exit. By sheer luck, the guy who'd warned us about the Hummer was there in his white truck. We pleaded for a lift, and he kindly drove us to the property's edge. We thanked him profusely, then raced to our car, piled in and sped off, vowing never to return to that quarry. Music, back in 2018, my cousin Ryan and I were hooked on urban exploration. We'd ventured into abandoned factories, deserted schools, and crumbling farmhouses that seemed one gust away from collapse. We weren't reckless. We tested floors before stepping on them, wore masks in dusty spots, and steered clear of places with active security. Still, one spot we discussed for months had us both hesitant. The sprawling, abandoned mansion on Lake Harlow's shore. It was the kind of place you only glimpse from afar, set back from the road behind tall, warped iron gates. Overgrown pines and bushes choked the driveway, concealing most of the house unless you caught a fleeting view through the trees while driving by. Local tales about the place were plentiful. The prevailing story was that a rich family lived there in the 90s before vanishing overnight, leaving everything behind. Furniture, clothes, dishes, even family photos. Theories swirled, from bankruptcy to witness protection to something more sinister. No one had bought the property since, and it had been left to rot for over 20 years. On the day we went, the sky was overcast and calm. We parked at a trailhead half a mile away and trekked through the woods to avoid being seen from the road. As we neared, the house's roofline emerged through the trees, revealing its massive size. 3 stories with towering windows and a sagging wraparound porch, its paint peeling like blistered skin. We crept around to the back, moving quietly in case anyone was nearby. The back door was unlocked, and stepping inside felt like entering another world. The air was heavy, carrying a faint scent of lake water and dust. The kitchen greeted us first, frozen in time like a film set. Plates were neatly stacked on the counter. A coffee mug with a dry brown stain sat by the sink, and an open cabinet revealed ancient, expired food boxes. A faded calendar on the wall was stuck on May 1997. We explored the downstairs cautiously. The living room held furniture cloaked in yellowed sheets, and the fireplace contained ash from a fire long extinguished. Family photos lined the hallway, showing smiling faces at barbecues and Christmas gatherings. Something about those cheerful images in such a desolate place gave me goosebumps. Some photos were so sun-faded their faces looked ghostly. Upstairs, the vibe grew unsettling. The first bedroom had a neatly made bed but empty dresser drawers, all yanked open. Another room's floor was blanketed with 1997 newspapers, each open to the classifieds. I didn't think much of it until I noticed they were all from the same week in July, with circled ads for discreet private buyers. The master bedroom was the eeriest. Thick curtains blocked the light, but when I pulled them back, I found the windows boarded up from the inside. The closet had a rusted padlock, and the floor in front of it was scratched, as if something heavy had been dragged but couldn't be moved. Ryan wanted to pry it open, but I convinced him to leave it alone. We had no tools, and I didn't want to break anything in a place we shouldn't be. He suggested checking the basement before we left. The basement door, tucked in a narrow kitchen hallway, released a damp, mildewy breeze when opened. The wooden stairs creaked ominously as we descended. The basement was vast, with stone walls and wooden shelves, mostly bare except for a few rusted cans and a broken lantern. In the center, lit by our flashlights, stood 5 mismatched, old chairs arranged in a perfect circle. Unlike the rest of the house, they were dust-free, as if recently used. I was about to say something to Ryan when we both froze. A door slammed shut upstairs, followed by footsteps crossing the floor above. We switched off our flashlights and stood in the dark, barely breathing. The footsteps stopped, then resumed, heading toward the hallway above the basement. My pulse pounded in my ears. We hadn't seen any cars or heard anyone since arriving. Whoever was up there had been silent until now. The footsteps paused right above the basement door, and then the handle rattled, sending a chill through me. Ryan grabbed my arm, pulling me toward a small, broken ground-level window half covered by a rotting shutter. It was barely big enough, but I went first, scraping my jacket on the glass as I dropped into the damp dirt outside. Ryan followed, and we sprinted into the woods, not daring to look back until we were deep in the trees. When I finally glanced over my shoulder, the basement door was wide open and a tall, motionless figure stood there, head slightly tilted as if watching us. We didn't stop running until we reached the car. The drive home was nearly silent, both of us too shaken to talk. That night, I couldn't stop replaying the chairs, the footsteps, the locked closet, and that haunting figure in the doorway. A couple weeks later, Ryan called me after posting in a Facebook group about the house's history. An older man replied, saying there had been sightings of someone in the house, possibly a squatter, but that didn't explain the eerie, almost ritual-like circle of chairs in the basement. At this point, I'm just grateful we got out safely and left it behind.